Hello, my name is Venkatraman and welcome to my show, The Raman Effect. Imagine this, 400 dead bodies stacked in an industrial shed. That's not a war zone statistic, that's happened this week, right now, and you probably haven't heard about it. Because on January 8th, the Iranian regime cut off the entire country from the internet. Complete blackout, and under that digital darkness, they are executing a massacre. At least 2,000 people killed in just 48 hours, according to the various reports coming out of Iran. Security forces opening fire on crowds. Eyewitnesses describe seeing hundreds of bodies throughout Tehran. Two people who went to Hazrizak searching for their loved ones counted over 400 bodies stacked in a shed there. Hospitals transferring dozens of corpses. Just on Friday, 44 bodies to one hospital in Karaj and 36 to another. Medical staff in Tehran, Shiraz, Karaj, they are all overwhelmed. A woman in Shiraz shot in the head, hooked to a ventilator, blood smeared across her skull. Doctors saying they have never seen scenes like this. In one Tehran neighborhood, at least 6 people dead, each one shot in the head or neck. A social worker who was at the protest described what happened when authorities attacked. She said, and I quote, "Bullets, tear gas, whatever you can think of, they would fire them. It was very much terrifying." She watched a girl get shocked in the neck with an electric device until she passed out. This is not crowd control. This is systematic killing under an internet blackout. In an affluent North Tehran, protesters report snipers stationed in the Tajrish area. Throughout the city, hundreds shot dead. The internet shutdown prevents documentation. That is the entire point. Kill with impunity when the world cannot watch. Now here is the question that is necessary to be asked. Why now? Because Iran survived the Green Movement in 2009, the 2019 Uprising, the Mahsa Amini protests in 2022. But what makes this movement different? I'll tell you exactly what makes this different. This actually started in the Grand Bazaar, the same place the 1979 revolution started. On December 28th, merchants in Tehran's centuries-old Grand Bazaar shut their shops and marched into the streets. Within 48 hours, they spread nationwide. And here's what many news outlets are missing. When Iran's merchants walk out chanting, "The merchant may die but will never accept humiliation," you are not watching another protest. You are actually watching the financial backbone of the country rejecting the regime. The bazaar brought down the Shah. When the bazaar closes in Iran, the system is already in trouble. Because bazaaris are not ideologues. They are pragmatists who deal in money, goods, and reality. When they say the system is broken beyond repair, it indeed is. The protests now span all 31 provinces in Iran. Over 2,200 people arrested, including 166 children and 48 university students. This number would be high by the time I publish this video. Entire towns in Kurdistan, Kermanshah, Ilam joining the shutdown. Partial closures in Tehran, Isfahan, Shiraz, everywhere. But here's my thesis. The Islamic Republic is facing something it cannot survive. Not because protesters are better organized this time, not because international pressure is higher, but because the economic structure that keeps the regime in power has finally cannibalized itself to death. To understand why, you need to see how we got here. How a 12-day war in June destroyed Iran's military credibility, how decades of Revolutionary Guard corruption drained the country dry, and how a currency collapse just wiped out everyone's savings. Let me take you back. June 13th, 2025. Early morning, Tehran wakes to explosions. Israel launches Operation Rising Lion. 200 fighter jets, the single largest aerial assault Iran has ever experienced. Not a limited strike, it was a total war. Nuclear facilities at Natanz, Fordo, Isfahan destroyed. Military command centers obliterated. Energy infrastructure wrecked. But here's what makes it devastating beyond the bombs. Car bombs detonate simultaneously across Tehran. 5 explosions targeting government buildings and nuclear sites. Scientists killed in their cars. The IRGC intelligence chief dead. Deputy intelligence chief dead. Missile strikes taking out Iran's top military minds. And the most stunning detail, an Israeli airstrike hits the Supreme National Security Council meeting. President Pezeshkian, who'd just taken office promising reform, gets injured. According to the reports, he escapes through an emergency hatch with a leg wound. For 2 decades, everyone talked about Israel maybe striking Iran someday. Theoretical red lines. And then June 13th happened. The taboo broke. And it lasted 12 days. Iran retaliated. Around 400 ballistic missiles, over 1,000 drones fired at Israel. Some broke through, at least 33 Israelis killed. But then day 10 arrived. June 22nd, the United States joined the war. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers carrying the most powerful conventional weapon America has, the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator. 14 of them, each weighing 30,000 pounds. Target? Fordo, the Iranian enrichment facility buried inside a mountain. The strikes hit 3 sites: Fordo with the bunker busters, Natanz and Isfahan with Tomahawk cruise missiles from submarines. All 3 regions were part of Iran's declared nuclear program under international monitoring. Over 1,000 Iranians killed during those 12 days. Dozens of nuclear scientists, top military commanders, leadership decimated. Iran fired ballistic missiles at the US Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, but they warned Washington first. 0 American casualties, message clear. Retaliating for dignity, and it is not escalation. And on June 24th, the so-called peace president Donald Trump declares a ceasefire. The 12-day war ends. Now here is what we need to notice. The war did not just destroy buildings, it destroyed Iran's deterrence. For decades, Iran prevented major attacks by threatening the Strait of Hormuz, unleashing Hezbollah, raining missiles on Israel and US bases. But when the moment came, Hezbollah almost stayed quiet. Houthis did nothing meaningful. Iran's air defenses proved inadequate. Top commanders killed in their offices. The message to Iranians was crystal clear. The regime cannot protect itself, let alone you. And when a state looks so vulnerable, capital flees, currency collapses, hoarding begins. Iran's economy was already a house of cards. Let me walk you through what happened to the currency. At the 2015 nuclear deal, $1 bought 32,000 rials officially. In 2022, when the current central bank governor took office, 430,000 rials per dollar. By March 2025, the rial crossed 1 million per dollar for the first time, making it the world's least valuable currency. Then late December 2025, a complete collapse. December 29, the rial hit 1.42 millions per dollar. It lost 56% of its value in just 6 months. By January 6 this year, 1.47 million rials per dollar. Since the 1979 revolution, when the dollar traded around 70 rials, the rial has lost roughly 20,000 times its value. 20,000 times. But those are just numbers. Let me tell you what that means on the ground. Food inflation running at 72% year over year. Not 7%, 72%. Medical supplies up 50%. Overall inflation 42.2% officially, and that is the government's lowball number. Many economists see approaching hyperinflation. Dairy products went up 6 times this year. Other goods more than 10 times. Someone's natural gas bill jumped from 520,000 rials, that is 40 cents, to 32 million rials, that is $25. That is being on the brink of hyperinflation levels. And Supreme Leader Khamenei ordered people to reduce consumption of food, water, energy, fuel. Seriously? The prices are going up. The government cannot do a thing about it. And the head of the government asks people to eat less food. That alone speaks volumes about the economic situation in Iran. The government's budget deficit is 18,000 trillion rials, which is around $428 billion. The meat has become a luxury item. 7 million Iranian people going hungry. The World Bank documented that between 2011 and 2020, 10 million Iranians fell into poverty. The poverty rate jumped from 20% to 28%, and it has gotten worse since. Between 27 and 50% of Iranians now live below the poverty line. The Ministry of Social Welfare announced in 2024 that 57% of Iranians experience malnourishment. 57% malnourished? In an oil-rich country? December 29, the central bank governor resigned. That same day, merchants at the Grand Bazaar, the same market that toppled the Shah in 1979, shut their shops and marched. But why that specific movement? What triggered that? The government eliminated the subsidized exchange rate. For years, Iran ran a rigged multi-tier system. Official rate of 285,000 rials per dollar for importing essential goods, but only regime-connected firms got access to those rates. Everyone else paid the market rate. This created massive corruption. Get the subsidized dollars, import goods, sell at market prices, pocket the 400% difference. And on January 2nd, President Pezeshkian eliminated that 285,000 rial rate. The subsidy would transfer directly to consumers as cash payments. The government announced they would pay $7 per month to help with rice, meat, pasta costs. $7 per month. While food inflation runs at 72%. To give a perspective, in India, the food inflation in November fell to minus 3.9%, and the RBI target has always been to keep it below 4%. But in Iran, when it hit a mammoth 72%, people felt enough is enough, and that's when the merchants walked out. But here's where it gets very interesting. This is not just a policy failure. This is about a structural kleptocracy built over decades. To understand why this revolution might actually succeed when others failed, you need to understand who really controls Iran's economy. Pop quiz. Who is Iran's largest economic actor? If you say it is the government or any private business, then it is wrong. It is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, the military. It controls the economy. Let me show you how deep this goes. The IRGC controls an estimated 30 to 50% of Iran's entire economy through front companies, religious foundations called bonyads, and most importantly, through its engineering arm, Khatam al-Anbiya Construction Headquarters. Here's how it all started. During the Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1988, the IRGC built independent engineering and logistics to sustain the war. After the war ended, those capabilities did not disappear. They in fact expanded. And in 1990, Supreme Leader Khamenei authorized creating Khatam al-Anbiya Construction Headquarters, KAA, under direct IRGC command. And the stated purpose? National reconstruction. And within a decade, it became one of the Middle East's largest contractors. By the early 2000s, KAA expanded into every major sector. Roads, tunnels, dams, pipelines, airports, metros, oil and gas, you name it, it's there. Operating through over 800 front companies and subcontractors, many registered under civilian names to hide military control. And during the privatization movement of the late 80s and early 90s, what really happened was mass transfer of these public assets to regime insiders. IRGC generals were the biggest beneficiaries in this. When international sanctions intensified, multinational companies fled, KAA monopolized oil, gas, petrochemical projects, and by 2006, they were working on projects worth over $7 billion. The US Treasury designated them in 2007 for proliferation activities. But it does not stop at construction. September 2009, Iran sold 51% of the telecommunication company to a Guards-affiliated group for $7.8 billion. That was largest transaction in Tehran's stock exchange history. The IRGC owns 45% of automotive giant Bahman Group, majority stake in naval shipbuilder Sadra. The US Treasury exposed in 2010 how the IRGC consolidates control over broad swaths of Iranian economy, displacing ordinary Iranian businessmen in favor of insiders hiding behind companies like KAA. Now here's why this matters. The IRGC does not just dominate legitimate business. It controls Iran's smuggling operations too. President Pezeshkian himself admitted in March 2025. He said, and I quote, 20 million liters of diesel are being smuggled every day. Such a volume cannot be transported manually. This requires a vast logistical network. He stopped short of naming the IRGC because no Iranian president survives confronting them. Hassan Rouhani tried in 2017. He criticized, and I quote, how a part of the economy in the hands of an unarmed government was handed over to an armed government. His presidency was systematically destroyed after that. And here's the most important dynamic we must not miss. The multi-tier exchange rate system, it was not economic policy. It was the mechanism the IRGC used to loot the country. Think about it. You are an IRGC connected company. You get dollars at 285,000 rials when the market's at 1.4 million. You import essential goods, sell at market prices that are way too high. You just made 400% profit on every transaction. Multiply that across every sector. Food, medicine, construction materials, fuel. You are taking hundreds of billions in stolen wealth over the years. Now connect all the dots. Iran's oil export revenues over 5 years, roughly $193.5 billion. Yet the GDP contracted from around 600 billion in 2010 to an estimated 356 billion in 2025. Where did the money go? Military and security get at least 16% of the budget officially. But the IRGC's share of oil revenues is several times larger than what the civilian government gets. Religious institutions get close to half of the government's oil income. Meanwhile, taxes rising at 63% are crushing the households amid high inflation. In simple terms, the money is being stolen. And here is a critical point. When Iran President Pezeshkian eliminated the subsidized rate, he was not trying to hurt people. He was trying to shut down the looting machine. Every economist, World Bank, IMF, everyone has said Iran's multi-tier exchange system breeds corruption. But here's what he didn't account for. When you eliminate the mechanism regime insiders used to steal, they don't suddenly become honest. They just steal through different other mechanisms and other channels, like smuggling, hoarding, artificial shortages. Any ordinary Iranians get crushed between the regime's corruption and government's failed reform attempt. But there is another dynamic making this different from the movements happened in 2009, 2019, and even the recent Mahsa Amini's movement. And here's what should terrify the regime. On January 8th, Reza Pahlavi, the former Shah's son living in exile, made a specific call for nationwide protests at a specific time.
ملت عزیز ایران، مرحله دیگری از خیزش ملی برای سرنگونی جمهوری اسلامی و بازپسگیری ایران عزیز را اعلام می‌کنم.
And guess what? Millions responded. Coordinated mass demonstrations unfolded nationwide in response to that call. Specified action, specified timing. You see, calls from outside Iran have been issued before, but they were ignored. This one was answered, simultaneously and at a scale. That's not a protest, that's a political threshold being crossed. Throughout these demonstrations, protesters chant one thing: death to the dictator, meaning Khamenei, waving the lion and sun flag, the pre-revolutionary monarchy symbol, chanting "Long live the Shah" in multiple cities. Now, I'm not advocating monarchy, nor am I saying that Pahlavi will lead the country. That's for Iranians to decide whether they want democracy or monarchy. But this tells you, protesters are not asking the Islamic Republic to reform anymore. They are demanding its complete removal, and that matters. 2009, protesters wanted fair elections within the system. 2019, economic relief. 2022, social freedoms with Mahsa Amini. And now they are saying the system itself is unreformable. They might be right. Because here's the brutal reality. Even if you had a sincere reformist president, say, Pezeshkian genuinely wants to fix things, he cannot. The IRGC controls the economy. The Guardian Council vets all candidates, ensuring only regime-approved people run. Khamenei has the final say on everything. Security forces answer to him, not the president. You cannot reform a system that is this corrupt from within. You can only dismantle it. That's what makes this movement dangerous. The Islamic Republic knows this. They understand if they lose, it's not just government change. It is the end of everything. The IRGC's economic empire, clerical rule, immunity for decades of corruption and oppression, which is why they are killing thousands under an internet blackout. The regime declared yellow state of emergency through the IRGC, one step below the red, which would mean even bloodier crackdown of protesters. And here's where it gets even more complicated. United States President Donald Trump is threatening military intervention. He says, and I quote, "The US is locked and loaded and ready to go if the regime kills protesters." Sounds noble, right? Freedom, democracy, protecting innocent lives. But let us be real. The same America that just bombed Iran's nuclear facility 7 months ago, killing over 1,000 Iranians, now suddenly cares about Iranian lives? The same administration that has reimposed maximum pressure sanctions that are starving ordinary Iranians while the IRGC elite eat well? This is not about freedom. This is about finishing what they started in June, using legitimate protests as cover for regime change that serves American interests. And you know what the tragedy is? The Iranian people's genuine uprising, their real suffering, their actual demand for change, that gets hijacked. It becomes a geopolitical chess game where Iranians are just pawns. The protesters do not need American bombs. They need the world to see what is happening. They need the information blackout broken. They need international pressure that actually helps them. Not another war that kills thousands more while Washington is claiming it's liberating them. You know what breaks my heart? An 11-year-old boy shot because he was in the streets wanting a future that is not built on lies and theft. A woman in Shiraz, bullet through her skull, hooked to a ventilator and blood everywhere. This is what kleptocracy looks like at the end. Not some abstract economic term. Real people, real blood, real bodies stacked in industrial sheds. So yes, Iran is burning, literally. And I don't know if this revolution succeeds. I don't know if the regime drowns it in blood like they have done before. What I do know, and what I'm absolutely certain, is that the Islamic Republic has lost its legitimacy in the eyes of millions of its own people. And that is not coming back. And here's what I want you to understand. For 45 years, the Islamic Republic has blamed everything on external enemies. America, Israel, sanctions, the global arrogance, the great Satan, the Zionist entity. Every failure, every shortage, every humiliation, always someone else's fault. And sure, sanctions hurt, I agree, I'm not naive about that. But you know what is actually killing this regime? its own greed, its own corruption, its own decision to build an economy where Revolutionary Guard generals and clerics loot everything while telling ordinary Iranians they can't afford food because of America. You can blame the CIA, America and Israel for a lot of other things in Iran's history, but you can't blame them for the economic collapse, the internal loot, the corruption, the poverty and the sufferings of the common people in Iran. So let me ask you, are we watching the end of an Islamic Republic? Or are we watching another massacre that the world will forget in a month while moving on to the next crisis? I don't have that answer, but I know this. People are dying right now. The least we can do is say their names mattered, their resistance mattered, their blood mattered. So please drop a comment. Tell me what you think. Share this video. Make sure people know. Because right now, there is an internet blackout covering one of the most significant uprisings of our time. And the only reason we know anything is because information is leaking through that darkness. And don't let that darkness win. And I'm hoping a better future for the Iranians. And please subscribe if you want analysis that digs beneath these headlines, that connects the dots others miss, that treats geopolitics not as a game but as a life and death reality it actually is for millions of people. Because this, what's happening in Iran right now, this certainly matters. And we are not looking away. And speaking of not looking away, there is another massacre unfolding that the world is conveniently ignoring. Hindus in Bangladesh. Systematic persecution, targeted killings, ethnic cleansing disguised as political unrest. I am coming for that story soon. The brutal truths about Bangladesh Hindu genocide. Because if we let one massacre slide into darkness, we give permission for all of them.